Hi students, welcome to video 8 is on ecological succession. So after this video, you should be able to compare and contrast primary and secondary succession. You should also be able to describe the general progression of succession, including types of organisms that are present. And you should be able to describe the effect that ecological succession has on ecosystems. Okay, for the next series of slides, I don't want you to write any of this down. I just want you to kind of think about what would happen. So my question to you is, what would happen if this street if people disappeared forever that morning? So think, 1 year into the future, going all the way to 1,000 years in the future. What kind of changes would be made? So here's our street and our starting point. So the first few years, there really wouldn't be a whole lot of anything. There's no soil. So you would need to have something that would initiate that soil. So things like lichen can grow on the street. If you're not sure what lichen are, they are a mutualistic relationship between a fungi and an algae. The algae is the photosynthesizer, and then the fungi actually absorbs the nutrients from the rock and holds water. And over time, they will actually weather the rock because they secrete acids, which does physical weathering and will break down rock and produce soil. So they are going to wear down this rock. They're going to continue to facilitate weathering. The moss are going to hold more soil and moisture. You're going to have grasses that will begin to colonize because now there's going to be soil from the weathering and erosion. You're going to start to have sun-loving shrubs and weeds that will come in and colonize the grass. Eventually, we'll have trees that will emerge. These are sun-loving trees because they have a lot of sun. So again, the sun-loving trees will continue to get larger, and eventually you will have trees that actually are shade tolerant. So their seeds can germinate even though there's shade because lots of these very big trees will be around. And then our final community is kind of the stopping point. We call it a climax community until something is going to start it over again, and we will have to start the whole process of succession. But after 1,000 years, the city would pretty much look like a forest. There'd be very little evidence that humans were even around to begin with. So primary succession is kind of our starting point. This is when we have no soil. We have to produce the soil. This is our starting point with the road that we were looking at. So it takes a very long time to produce soil, about 400 to 500 years. Again, this really important piece right here, you're starting with no soil, so there's bare rock. Pioneer species are the species that come in and they're the ones that start the succession event. So moss, lichen, bacteria are usually going to be those early pioneer species. Over time, your community builds up. So this is a diagram showing you basically kind of what we went through in the beginning. But you'll notice that once you get here towards the trees, yeah, you had grasses and shrubs and things like that, but eventually you start to lose those different organisms because there's just not enough light, there's not enough space for those grasses to just continue to grow. So eventually you will lose those. A couple of terms to be aware of. Facilitation is when one species paves the way for the next. It might even be absolutely necessary. So, for example, a pine tree is going to provide shade for an oak tree to later come in. Pine trees are sun-loving, oak trees are shade-loving. So once the pine tree kind of provides that shade, it actually ends up kind of dying off because the oak trees are taking over. Interference, on the other hand, is when one species is going to prevent something else from being able to come in. So, for example, when you have grasses that are really thick, sometimes we have invasive species that come in, and these grasses basically turn into mats, where when the tree drops a seed, the seed cannot germinate because it doesn't ever actually reach the soil. So that would be interference. So say you actually do have soil present. Something happened, maybe a forest fire, a tornado, or a hurricane. Maybe it was human logging or something like that, but you still have soil present. You still have the bacteria in the soil. That is called secondary succession. So the soil is there, an ecosystem was there before. It's not bare rock. I don't need to make the soil. So an example besides, the standard ones like forest fires and things like that, we actually can have meteor events. So this was the Tunguska meteor event that took place in 1908. You can see kind of a map of It happened in Siberia. And a meteor shot down and hit. And once it exploded, it basically caused all these trees to just flatten. So you see, like, there's a few of them left standing, but almost all of them are pushed out in the direction that the blast went. And we could see this around the entire area. It's like a circle of trees just sitting there, the ones that didn't get destroyed anyway. So as we go further and further along in succession, the things that happen are all of these things increase. So we have a larger number of species. The total population increases. The biomass, which is the available matter in the organic matter, increases. All of these things are going to continue increasing as we go throughout time. And then one final vocabulary word for you. The climax community is our final last community. And it will change some over time, but for the most part, it's going to stay the exact same with those large trees. This would be kind of like a old growth forest that you might think of like the Amazon. So nothing's really going to change that unless there is some sort of event like logging that humans do, or there's like a forest fire that could reset and restart succession. All right, that's it. Bring your questions tomorrow.